Grayzone Warfare is an upcoming PvPvE Tactical Extraction Shooter entering early access soon. We've covered it here on the channel before, and we've had plenty of breakdowns of what's out there already, but today they revealed a bit more information in regards to some of the technical aspects of the game and the experience we can expect to take part in just a short bit of time that I find actually seriously impressive. Today, we're breaking this down and letting you know all you need to that's important out of these new updates. So let me know your thoughts as we go along, and do me a favor, drop a like on the video if you enjoy it. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe for more Grayzone Warfare coverage, as well as other FPS content, news, updates, guides, all that kind of stuff. I'd love to have you in the community. And also, make sure to follow over on TikTok for the short form content linked down below. But let's get into the updates with Grayzone. So recently, Grayzone showed off a 20+ minute video of raw gameplay, and there were also a few creators that played and got their perspectives out there, published that for the world to see as well, from a lot of hours of play. So we've seen the combat, we've seen some of the world exploration and all, but in today's information, it details a bit more about the world building, like some lore stuff and a little bit of the world we can expect to interact with, but more so focused around the engine of the game and the world at large, how it actually performs. Firstly, for scale, we are provided with the map of Lemang, the playable world within Grayzone, where it listed off a few different points of interest: Namthaven, YBL-1, Fort Nerith, Sawmill, Hugh Vongza, Hunter's Paradise, Midnight Sapphire, Falang Airfield, Falang, Banpa, Tiger Bay, and Blue Lagoon, with a giant ground zero area in the center. Now, that's not going to be the only places that you can find things or anything like that. Like, it's not just deep jungle between each of those. There is mentioned that there's going to be unnamed points of interest all throughout the world that may have some interesting things you want to take a look at, but around that, there's 3 base camps around the world, and at first glance, you're like, okay, this seems like a standard large map. I don't know, maybe let's say like comparable to a Battle Royale sized map, but when you consider the hours of footage and still learning things from just the simple 4 quadrants of Namthaven that are now out in the wild, with what appears to be 48 playable grid sectors, all of that footage looks to be 10% of the playable experience. I hadn't personally played just yet, but from acquaintances that had, they played for a dozen or so hours and more, and still feel like they didn't explore everything that those 4 quadrants had to offer. So the scale of this world seems to be massive, but okay, that means that we're probably going to be taking a performance hit of some kind in order to render out that world in real time with each player's experience. Like, best case scenario, maybe the world loads in chunks, right? But in an open world game where survival is key, that could offer an unfair advantage if someone is able to render the world at a larger distance than another player. But that's where Grayzone's new tech comes into play, because none of that will be a concern, none of that will be happening. Powered by Scala, their engine for Grayzone tackles incredible graphical and rendering capabilities at scale and does not impact performance, or so it would seem. It's really cool because they released an accompanying video that showcased all of what they were able to produce with these updates to the game after utilizing this new tech. So you'll see that the content itself didn't look half bad to begin with, but you can tell it's more of a desolate and barren world before implementing this kind of stuff, like basic building blocks of the content planned, and then it shifts over to seeing an insane amount of detail in regards to the environment, ambient items, and other things to make it feel like a genuine world, right? Like, that's the part that does it for me. I'm all for a simpler art style if that's what the game is intending, but with the heavy emphasis on realism and all with Grayzone, seeing the entire world come together as if it's a lived-in and previously inhabited area that was abandoned on short notice, like the lore is suggesting, that's a really good way to get me involved in the game and to care on a much deeper level. It feels like you're in a world here. Now, again, the fascinating part to me is that so far it appears that this does not hinder performance at all, which is kind of crazy when you consider how much more is being filled out in regards to items in that world. Just this comparison video, I think, is crazy to consider that any performance hit is minimal. That's awesome from a technical standpoint, and is something that I think really will help the game play out long term. The other assets that were released really showcased and honed in on the lighting changes that were made and that are now capable because of these adjustments to the engine, making it something that, again, is much more realistic. It isn't necessarily like so cartoony in how rooms from the outside and that ambient lighting make their way into areas, all compounding and adding to bring this realistic approach to the world of Lemang and the world of Grayzone. Now, it was mentioned that, like, one of the long-term goals is to have day and night cycles and dynamic weather and stuff. So I'd be curious to see, like, if anything in the future comes of that. I'd love to see some progression style stuff like this, where we see it from very first concept to where it goes and eventually is the final product. I think that'd be really cool to see those systems also detailed, but again, we're probably some ways off on that. So technically speaking, it looks like the game is coming along pretty nicely and is awesome, but there's other fascinating things I think with the world and how things will work here is that firstly, there's no in-game timer. There's no like match timer or parameters for it. So you can explore as long as you'd like with no reset required. A lot of games will end up having that just for server limitations or whatever the case, but these are going to be ever present. You can stay in there for days at a time, quite literally, if you'd like to, or you could go in, exfil for like 5-10 minutes if you wanted to. It's just really all up to you, which is pretty cool. Again, the target is to have 48 players on this too, which will be really interesting again to see how this will perform with players, not only just the AI. Last I heard, they weren't quite there just yet, but I mean, who knows? That was a while ago at this point, but I'm honestly so ready for more. Right now, there's no given date on when early access will open up here. It seems like they're starting to hint more and more towards us being announced perhaps very shortly, but if I'm guessing, it's probably like another 30 to 60 days away here that we see early access kick off. But at that point, the game will open up. You can play it yourself and the game will evolve with the player base. Obviously, what we have at early access is not the full launch plans of the game and everything that we have, but it's got some pretty cool stuff on hand that is that first playable version, what they're looking to introduce. Like we've talked about before, 3 distinct PMC factions supporting up to 48 players in total, with a maximum of 16 players per faction, the expansive world of Lemang, 42 kilometers squared, ruthless AI behavior with hundreds of enemies. The target at one point was upwards of 1,000 AI enemies throughout the world, complex external and terminal ballistic simulations for realistic shooting experiences, which was broken down before in prior videos, comprehensive simulation of realistic firearm recoil, innovative health systems, a network of unique vendors, 6 of those with 150 quests in total at the early access launch, 8 weapons with over 400 interchangeable parts, with more coming along shortly after, detailed character customization, and a ton of other stuff that honestly is like, it's really cool to see this and what's still planned for how grand a scale this could end up working out to be. But Grayzone dropping more information here. I'm hoping they're dropping information on early access and when we can play it here soon, maybe the next thing they drop. But for right now, that's the newest update with Grayzone, and honestly, thoroughly impressed by what we've seen so far. But that said, we're going to wrap it up there. Before we do, though, make sure to check out my friends over at Gamer Advantage for what I firmly believe are the best blue light glasses on the market. I've worked with these guys for 3 years now at this point. Cannot recommend them enough. They're the most lightweight, comfortable, and durable frames out there as far as I've used, and I definitely think that they've helped my daily productivity. Full transparency, yes, they are a bit more of an investment, but I do think your vision's absolutely worth investing into, especially if you're like me, you look at a monitor, your phone, or you're gaming for a good chunk of the day. If you guys would like to learn more, at the very least, I'd recommend checking out their website where they can better break down the science and all the specifics way better than I could, but what I can personally say is that I'd highly recommend them. So if you guys would like to learn more, check the link in the description below, and if you want to pick something up for yourself, use code Espresso to get 10% off your entire order. But for now, that's what we're going to call it. Let me know your thoughts down below. Anything in particular strike you out of this new information for Grayzone? Are you looking forward to more information on when the early access and when you can play is going to be coming? Whatever the case, drop your thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Grayzone and other FPS content here on the channel. I'd love to have you. But for now, thanks so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.